Davis Collins had learned, early and painfully, that wealth did not soften people, it sharpened them. From the outside, his life looked like a case study in success. The penthouse sat above the city like a watchful god. Glass walls, brushed steel accents, silent elevators that obeyed his fingerprint. At night, the skyline glittered beneath his windows, as if the world itself were performing for him. By 36, Davis controlled a constellation of investments, tech platforms that predicted consumer behavior before consumers did, real estate portfolios that quietly reshaped neighborhoods, and private equity funds that moved markets without making headlines. He owned power, the way other men owned watches, and yet every evening he ate alone. He sat at a long stone dining table, designed to host 10, and used exactly one chair, scrolling through reports while food cooled in front of him. Sometimes he forgot to eat entirely, other times he chewed without tasting, mind already 10 steps ahead, planning for disasters that hadn't happened yet, but absolutely would, because they always disappointed. It wasn't bitterness. Davis had outgrown bitterness years ago. This was closer to certainty, like gravity, like taxes, like the way compliments arrived wrapped in expectations. He had once believed love was something you stumbled into if you worked hard enough and stayed decent. That illusion died in his late 20s, buried under a non-disclosure agreement after a relationship ended with leaked messages, a public embarrassment, and a sudden spike in anonymous sources talking to the press. After that came the executive who smiled too much and siphoned confidential data to a competitor. Then a cousin who filed a lawsuit claiming emotional damages for being cut out of opportunity. Davis settled every one of them, not because they deserved it, but because time was the only thing he refused to waste. By the time he hit his mid-30s, Davis had perfected a version of himself that was polite, controlled, and unreachable. He laughed at the right moments. He tipped well. He remembered names, but he never trusted, especially not kindness. Kindness, in his experience, was always the preface to a request. That was why he didn't notice Olivia Schultz at first. She arrived on a Tuesday morning through a high-end staffing agency that specialized in discretion. Her resume was unremarkable in a way that felt intentional. Years of private domestic work, glowing references, no gaps that raised suspicion. She wasn't the youngest applicant, nor the most polished. She didn't wear designer clothes or perfume that announced her presence before she spoke. She simply showed up, nodded politely, and got to work. Davis became aware of her, the way one becomes aware of a change in temperature, gradually, without alarm. The lights in his home office adjusted subtly as the sun shifted. The house felt quieter, not silent, but settled. His favorite mug, the one he hadn't realized he preferred, appeared clean and warm each morning. The fridge stopped looking like a crime scene of forgotten takeout containers and started resembling something a human lived with intention. Olivia didn't hover. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. She didn't linger in doorways or smile too eagerly when he passed. In fact, she treated him with the same calm courtesy she offered the security team, the delivery drivers, even the building's maintenance staff, which was unsettling. Most people either tried to impress Davis Collins or avoided him altogether. Olivia did neither. She worked efficiently, yes, but there was care in it. She placed things where they made sense, not where they looked expensive. She left meals covered and warm when she noticed he was still on a call, never interrupting. When something broke, she fixed it quietly or flagged it without drama, and she never flirted. This, more than anything, bothered him. One afternoon, he found himself standing in the kitchen, longer than necessary, watching her organize the pantry with a precision that suggested she had opinions about spices. She caught him looking, raised an eyebrow, and said lightly, "If you're waiting for a reveal, I'm sorry to disappoint. It's just alphabetical order." He huffed despite himself. That was the first crack. If anyone had told Davis Collins that romance would sneak up on him disguised as routine, he would have laughed them out of the room. Romance in his mind arrived with fireworks or contracts, mergers, public declarations, something measurable. What it did not arrive as what it had never been was Tuesday nights, quiet dinners, and a woman arguing with his coffee machine like it had personally betrayed her. And yet, somewhere between Olivia reorganizing his calendar without asking, and Davis discovering he preferred her dry commentary to market analysis, the atmosphere in the penthouse shifted. It wasn't obvious at first. It was a series of small betrayals of habit. Davis started coming home earlier, not because work was lighter. If anything, it was worse, but because he found himself calculating how late was too late to miss dinner. He pretended it was about nutrition, efficiency, routine. Olivia saw through it immediately. "You know," she said one evening, as she set plates down, "most people ease into domesticity gradually. You're doing it like a hostile takeover." He glanced at her. "I don't know what that means." "It means you're hovering," she replied, unbothered. "And if you ask me one more question about the seasoning, I'm charging consulting fees." He smiled despite himself and sat. They ate together now, not every night, but often enough that it stopped feeling intentional. Conversation flowed easily, sometimes serious, sometimes ridiculous. Davis told her stories about deals gone wrong. Olivia shared moments from her life without dramatizing them, offering humor where others would have offered self-pity. She was quick-witted in a way that surprised him. Not sharp-edged, but observant. She noticed patterns, called out nonsense gently. When Davis spiraled into overthinking, she interrupted him with calm facts. "You're doing the thing," she told him once. "What thing?" "The thing where you assume the worst before anyone's had a chance to disappoint you." He leaned back in his chair. "It's efficient." She raised an eyebrow. "So is never leaving your house doesn't mean it's healthy." That was new. People rarely challenged him without softening the blow. Olivia didn't soften. She didn't need to. Still, suspicion lingered. Davis began paying attention in ways he hadn't paid attention to anyone in years. Noticing how she tied her hair up when she was focused, how she muttered sarcastic commentary under her breath when appliances misbehaved, how she laughed, once, quietly, when Davis attempted to fix a malfunctioning smart light and instead turned the entire living room purple. "Congratulations," she said dryly. "You've created nightclub ambiance." He smirked. "You don't approve?" "I'm saying if music starts playing, I'm calling security." That earned a real laugh, the kind he hadn't realized he missed. Weeks passed. She asked for nothing. Later that week, Davis overheard a conversation he wasn't meant to hear. Olivia was speaking to Mabel ladled in the service corridor. "You should ask for a raise," Mabel said. Olivia shrugged. "I'm paid fairly. For him, fair is relative." "Fair is fair," Olivia replied. "And I don't stay places that make me feel small." Davis froze. That sentence followed him for the rest of the day. She wasn't trying to climb. She wasn't positioning herself. She wasn't afraid to leave. And suddenly, the possibility that she was genuine became unbearable. Because if she was real, if this kindness wasn't a mask, then Davis's worldview was wrong. And if it was wrong, then he had been alone by choice. That night, after a brutal day of investor calls and thinly veiled threats disguised as negotiations, Davis lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He thought about trust, about control, about how easily people disappointed when you expected too much, and about how impossible it was that Olivia hadn't disappointed him at all. He sat up, ran a hand through his hair, and laughed softly to himself, a dry, humorless sound. "Fine," he muttered into the empty room. "Let's settle this." Davis told himself it wasn't paranoia. It was due diligence. That was the phrase he used internally as he deliberately disrupted the order of his private office late on a Thursday night. Papers that normally lived in color-coded harmony were scattered across the desk and floor. A confidential folder lay half open. His laptop remained unlocked, the screen dim but visible. His watch, worth more than most cars, sat abandoned near the edge of the desk. The room looked vulnerable. He hated Tess. It made his stomach tight. Davis dismissed Thornhill Mark early, claiming he'd work late. Mabel had already gone home, her parting comment, "Try sleeping like a human tonight," echoing faintly in his head. The penthouse settled into its low mechanical hum, lights dimming automatically, the city outside glowing like a promise no one ever kept. At exactly 9:30, Davis lay down on the leather sofa in his office. He kicked off his shoes, loosened his collar, and closed his eyes. He practiced slowing his breathing, letting his chest rise and fall evenly. This was ridiculous, he knew that. A grown man pretending to sleep in his own home like a badly written spy novel. Still, he stayed. Minutes passed. His calf cramped. He resisted the urge to shift. Then, soft footsteps. They paused just outside the office. Davis's pulse spiked. He forced himself to remain still, breath steady, lashes unmoving. The door creaked open slightly, and Olivia stepped inside. She stopped short. If she reached for the laptop, if she peeked at the documents, if her hand lingered too long near his watch, he would have his answer. Instead, she sighed quietly, not annoyed, concerned. She moved closer, footsteps careful. Davis felt the air shift as she leaned over the desk, but not once did her fingers brush the laptop. She gathered the loose papers without looking at them, stacking them neatly, aligning edges with methodical precision. She placed the folder back where it belonged, closed, untouched. She knelt to pick up the pages on the floor, smoothing creases, setting them aside. Then she noticed him. He felt it when her attention shifted, the slight pause, the hesitation. "Of course," she murmured softly. "You'd work yourself into the ground if no one stopped you." Her voice carried no judgment, only familiarity. She stepped closer. Davis's breath caught as she gently draped a blanket over him, tucking it around his shoulders with surprising tenderness. Her fingers brushed his wrist accidentally, warm and brief, and she pulled back as if aware of the intimacy of the gesture. She glanced around, then returned with a glass of water, setting it on the table beside him. 2 tablets followed, painkillers. "You're not invincible," she said quietly, "despite what your calendar seems to think." She lingered a moment longer, arms crossed loosely, studying his face. Davis could feel her gaze, not appraising, not curious, but something closer to worry. Then she surprised him. "Thank you," she whispered, not to him, but into the room itself, "for paying people on time, for not yelling, for not treating work like punishment." A pause. "You'd be shocked how rare that is." She shook her head faintly, as if embarrassed by her own honesty, and turned toward the door. "No theft, no snooping, G, no leverage, just care." And in that moment, the billionaire watched in silence and realized he'd been wrong about people. The realization hit him with physical force. His throat tightened, his chest ached. Years of certainty cracked open, flooding him with something dangerously close to grief. When the door closed softly behind her, Davis opened his eyes. He sat up slowly, the blanket slipping from his shoulders. His vision blurred, and he swiped angrily at his face, more irritated by the tears than surprised by them. "Idiot," he muttered to himself. Not her. He stayed there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, replaying every quiet kindness he'd dismissed, every moment he'd misjudged. The test hadn't exposed Olivia. It had exposed him. The next morning, Davis emerged from his bedroom earlier than usual, hair still damp, expression unreadable. Olivia was in the kitchen, setting out breakfast. She looked up. "You're up before the sun. Should I be concerned?" He hesitated. "I owe you an apology," he said. She blinked. "Did you break something?" "No." "Then I'm intrigued." He exhaled slowly. "I'm not very good at trusting people." She studied him for a beat, then nodded. "That tracks. I tested you," he continued, voice tight. "Last night." Silence. Olivia set down the plate she was holding and crossed her arms, waiting. "I pretended to be asleep," he added. "I wanted to see what you'd do." Her expression didn't harden. It didn't soften either. "That's disappointing," she said calmly. "I know, but at least you're honest about it." She held his gaze, unflinching. "I don't play games, Davis. Not because I'm above them, because I don't have the energy." A corner of his mouth twitched. "Fair." She nodded once. "Don't make a habit of it." "I won't." Then she slid his plate toward him. "Eat." "You look like someone who learned something unpleasant about himself." He smiled faintly. "Is it that obvious?" Painfully. He started small. Too small, actually. At lunchtime, he walked into the kitchen and placed a sleek envelope on the counter. Olivia glanced at it. "What's that?" "A bonus," he said. "For what?" "For being you," he answered. Then immediately regretted how stupid it sounded. Olivia stared at him, then laughed once, short and genuine. "That might be the weirdest thing anyone's ever said to me while holding an envelope." Davis cleared his throat. "You deserve it." She didn't touch the envelope. Instead, she leaned against the counter, studying him like she was weighing his sincerity. "Is this guilt money?" she asked, blunt. Davis's ears heated. "No." "Is this apology money?" "No." "Is this please don't quit money?" He hesitated too long. Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Ah." Davis exhaled. "Fine, maybe a little." Olivia shook her head slowly, but there was no anger in her expression, only clarity. "I'm not bought," she said, "but I do accept fair compensation." She finally took the envelope, then slid it back toward him. "Put it through the agency properly. Transparent. No secret gifts." Davis blinked. "You're refusing a bonus?" "I'm refusing a dynamic," she corrected calmly. "We can be adults, or we can be messy. I prefer adults." Davis's mouth twitched. "You say that like I'm not an adult." "You're an adult," she replied. "Just one who thinks trust can be managed with spreadsheets." He laughed under his breath, despite himself. "It can't?" Olivia's smile softened, just slightly. "Not the kind you actually want." That night, Davis pulled up her employment file, not to hunt for dirt, but to understand. Her references weren't just strong, they were emotional. Words like steady, trustworthy, never take shortcuts, the kind of person you want around your children. One line stood out: she refused to compromise her values, even when it cost her. Then he found a detail buried in the agency notes. Olivia had declined a higher-paying position because the employer demanded a relationship discretion clause that was really about control. She had walked away from money, Not because she was careless, but because she was careful about what she allowed in her life. This was the truth. Davis hadn't considered Olivia wasn't kind because she didn't know how ugly people could be. She was kind because she had seen ugliness and refused to become it. Then, slowly, distance turned into desire. They began sharing meals more often, not as a performance, but as a habit. They traded dry humor and honest conversation. Davis found himself coming home earlier, pretending it was for efficiency, while Olivia stared at him like she could read the lie off his forehead. One day the fire alarm went off, triggered by an overly ambitious cooking experiment, and Olivia rushed into the hallway coughing, hair half-tied, eyes wide. Davis grabbed her arm instinctively to pull her back, their bodies colliding briefly. Too close, too warm. For a second, neither moved. "Okay," she said, clearing her throat as she stepped back. "So, smoke detectors are dramatic." Davis swallowed. "I'll open a window." They avoided each other for exactly 3 hours afterward. It was the most awkward silence the penthouse had ever produced. Another evening, Davis walked into the living room shirtless, fresh from the shower, and froze when he realized Olivia was kneeling by the coffee table sorting paperwork. She looked up. He looked down. There was a long, dangerous pause. "Wow," she said, eventually, tone unreadable. "You really don't believe in warning labels." Davis's mouth opened, closed. "I live here." "Yes," she replied, "and I have eyes." She stood abruptly and walked past him, muttering, "I'm going to pretend that didn't just reset my brain." Davis stood there, pulse racing, uncomfortably aware that he didn't want her to pretend anything. The tension finally surfaced one evening, over something ridiculous. Olivia caught him in the kitchen, Googling. She leaned over his shoulder. "Why does your search history say how to not emotionally sabotage relationships?" He didn't look up. "Market research." She laughed, really laughed. "You're unbelievable. You're one to talk." He shot back. "You reorganized my closet. You dressed like a confused billionaire," she said. I intervened. He turned toward her, smile lingering, then faltering as he realized how close they were standing. The air thickened with unspoken awareness. "Olivia," he said quietly. "Yes, I don't want to mess this up." "Then don't," she replied. He searched her face. "It's not that simple." "It never is," she said. "But it doesn't have to be complicated." Their first kiss came later, slow and deliberate, with Davis giving her space to step back, and Olivia choosing not to. It was warm, unhurried, grounded. When they pulled apart, her forehead rested briefly against his chest, like she was letting herself trust the moment. "Okay," she murmured. "That was unexpected." Davis smiled softly. "Liar," she laughed. "Maybe." They didn't rush. That restraint made everything sharper, not colder. But as intimacy grew, Davis's fear rose with it. He began pulling back, working later, avoiding moments that felt too exposed, retreating into control because it was familiar. Olivia not iced immediately. "You're distancing," she said calmly, one night. Davis sighed. "I don't want to lose this." "Then stop acting like it's already lost," she replied. He met her gaze, tension written into every line of him. "I don't know how to trust without bracing for impact." Olivia stepped closer, voice steady. "I won't be an experiment, Davis, and I won't compete with your fear." The next day, the penthouse felt tense. Olivia moved through the space with her usual competence, but the warmth was muted. She was polite without being close. At breakfast, she set his plate down and stepped back instead of sitting across from him. The chair opposite remained empty. You don't have to hover, she said evenly when he glanced up. I'm just giving you space. Space. The word hit like a warning. That's not what I want, Davis said. Then show me, Olivia replied. That evening he stood in his office, looking at his reflection in the glass, realizing he could survive 1,000 business losses and still be terrified of one honest human connection. A soft knock sounded. Olivia stood at the doorway. I'm heading out for the night. Panic rose. Olivia, Davis said too quickly. Wait. She paused. Yes? I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I'm used to planning for failure, preparing for the worst. It's how I've survived. Olivia studied him. Survival isn't the same as living. I know, he said, and that's the problem. I keep thinking, Davis continued, that if I pull back now, I can control the damage, that if I don't need you too much, I won't lose myself. Her jaw tightened slightly. And where does that leave me? On the outside, Davis admitted. Yes, she said quietly. It does. She stepped into the room, holding her ground. I like you, Davis, she said. I care about you, but I won't shrink myself so you can feel safer. I won't stay where I'm halfway chosen. He closed his eyes briefly. What if I choose wrong? Everyone does, she replied. That's not the risk. The risk is choosing nothing. Davis took a step closer, then another. I don't want to manage this, he said. I don't want to test it, pace it, or analyze it into something lifeless. Olivia's breath caught. I want to be bad at this, Davis continued. I want to be honest and scared and still here. He stopped in front of her, close enough to feel the tension hum. I choose you, he said, simply. Not because it's safe, because it's real. Olivia searched his face, looking for the usual retreat. Finding none, she nodded once. Okay, she said softly. Then we do this like adults. No games, no disappearing acts. Davis smiled faintly. I'm terrible at games anyway. That's not true, she replied. You're excellent at them. You're just finally deciding not to play. The kiss that followed wasn't tentative. It was grounding, real. When they pulled apart, Olivia's hands rested against his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath her palms. So, she said, humor returning, are you done emotionally spiraling for the week? Davis laughed quietly. No promises. I'll settle for effort. In the weeks that followed, the penthouse didn't change overnight. The glass walls still reflected the city. The lights still responded to voice commands. What changed was how the space was lived in. Davis woke earlier now, not from anxiety, but from the quiet awareness of another presence. Olivia moved through the apartment with steady rhythm, and the sound of her steps registered as comfort. He joined her for breakfast without checking his phone, not to prove anything, because he wanted to. Don't stare, Olivia said one morning. It's unsettling. I'm not staring. You are, she replied. And you look like someone who just discovered basic domestic joy. He smiled. Is it that obvious? Painfully. Davis adjusted his schedule for real. Meetings ended earlier. Emails waited. He learned the radical art of leaving things unfinished. Olivia pursued her own goals with quiet determination. She re-enrolled in a certification program she'd postponed for years, studying at the kitchen counter. One evening, Davis handed her a formal envelope. Olivia eyed it. If this is another surprise bonus, I'm setting it on fire. It's not, he said. Open it. Inside was a properly processed pay adjustment and role clarification, transparent, agency reviewed, no hidden gifts. Olivia read it carefully. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to, Davis replied. Not to keep you, to respect you. She folded it and smiled, slow and genuine. Then yes, I accept. A month later, Davis received a major offer, more power, more influence, more expansion. Old Davis would have accepted without blinking. He brought it to Olivia instead. I want your thoughts, he said. Not permission, perspective. Olivia read it and set it down. Do you want it? Davis thought carefully. I want the idea of it. I don't want the life it would cost. Olivia nodded. Then you already know your answer. Davis turned it down the next morning. No regret followed. The ending wasn't fireworks. It was consistency. Davis choosing honesty when it was uncomfortable. Olivia choosing partnership without losing herself. Laughter in rooms that once echoed. Shared mornings, shared plans, shared quiet. On a calm Sunday afternoon, Olivia curled up beside Davis on the couch, book in hand, feet tucked under his leg. You know, she said lazily, you're still bad at resting. Davis smiled, kissing the top of her head. But I'm getting better. Olivia closed her eyes. That's all anyone can ask. Outside, the city moved on, busy, loud, hungry for more. Inside, Davis Collins finally had enough. And Olivia Schultz was happy. Not because she was chosen, but because she was met. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that not all kindness hides a price, that some people choose integrity even when no one is watching, and that love doesn't need to rescue, it only needs to meet you where you are, then you're not alone. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop guarding ourselves against happiness and let someone show up honestly. If you believe that trust can be rebuilt, that healing doesn't have to be loud, and that real love grows quietly through consistency and care, tap the like button and subscribe for more stories like this. And if this story touched something personal in you, leave a comment and tell us what made you stay until the end. Your story matters too.